Hi, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where you are in the world. I'm Dan Goodstein. I head up the Institute for RPA and AI. Welcome to today's webinar, Transforming BFSI with AI, Improving Operational Efficiencies. Thanks to our friends at HGS for sponsoring this event and many of the things we do throughout the year. If you're here, I probably don't need to tell you that the financial services industry is ripe for transformation, especially with the growth of AI. If you're a fintech, you're probably already piloting some of this. If you're more of a legacy institution, you know how important it is right now. And AI just might be the answer on how to accelerate or catch up on the innovation of operations. We've got a great panel today who's going to walk you through various AI applications for improving operational efficiencies in banking, financial services, and insurance. So I'll introduce them in just a moment. Before I do, for those of you who have not attended an ERPA AI event in the past, we are a professional association focused on enterprise AI and automation, digital transformation. We've got over 130,000 members worldwide, and our goal is really to be a source of education, networking, and advice to anybody that's in the space. So if there's something that you're working on, we have a team of experts, member concierge as well. Please reach out to us and let us help you with whatever it is that you're working on. With that, let me introduce today's panelists. As I mentioned, we got an expert panel here who are in the industry doing these things every day. So let me ask them to introduce themselves. Lawrence, maybe I can start with you.
Yes, hello. Lawrence Bilson. I work for Nexus Frontier Tech, where we develop AI solutions for financial services to help improve the decision process. And I'm very glad to be here. Thank you.
Thanks, Lawrence. And Carlos?
Hi, everyone. Thank you for being here today. Carlos Pozo. I'm a solutions consultant in the BFSI space, about 3 decades of experience in banking. And my forte is really around everything related to core banking and the ancillary products necessary to run a bank or credit union.
I'm really excited. I saw some of the content beforehand, Carlos, and it's one of these things where we do this in the industry, but I'm also a customer of a lot of these services, so I'm very intrigued to hear what's going on and your perspective. We are going to do a Q&A at the end, so if you have any questions for Carlos or Lawrence or myself, feel free to send them throughout the session. You do that by going to the private chat box on the right-hand side of your screen. We'll get through as many questions as possible or schedule some time with you after the webinar if need be. But with that, Carlos, let me hand it to you to get started.
Great. Thank you, Dan. So we live in a hyper-personalized world. Amazon, Uber, DoorDash. Everything has to be predictive and fast and just super high expectations. So AI helps us take data and use that data to help present customers with products and services that are meaningful to them. So one of the areas that AI helps financial services with is everything around customer experience and hyper-personalization. So by segmenting customer data and understanding different personas involved, now we can go ahead and build personalized products and services. Someone late stage life thinking more about transfer of wealth probably needs different product services than someone, 19 to 25, the TikTok generation, right? And so by taking data and really understanding it, we're able to help our financial services clients provide the best products possible for their customers. The other area that is very important for financial services is the operational efficiency ratio. So it's a number that has to be reported every 3 months, every quarter, in what's called a call report. And it shows the health of the bank and how they're doing in terms of operating their bank compared to the money that's coming in. And so one of the things that we're going to look into today is everything around the process of originating a mortgage loan. That is an area where we're going to have an opportunity to reduce some timings really to incredible levels. When I show you the numbers, it's going to be truly mind-boggling that you can reduce things down from what used to take many hours to minutes and what used to take weeks into hours. The other area that AI can help with is everything around compliance, regulations, fraud detection, and prevention. So all of those areas are important to help boost everything around that area. So today, like I mentioned, I'm going to go into loan origination. And instead of, giving you slides on background around loan origination or background on us, I want to cut to the chase. I want to ask you, what if I could show you how to turn a process that typically takes on average 27 and a half hours down to 5 minutes? Is that something that's interesting to you? Right? So we're going to be able to take the review of documents down from 27 and a half hours to 5 minutes. We're also going to be able to help auditors that take applications and do a spot check, really, that gets them to about 15% on a good day. We're going to be able to take that to 100% and really screen all the cases for potential fraud, for potential risk. And we're going to show you how to take the whole process of getting someone onboarded and ready for closing from 3 to 4 weeks down to an hour. Everyone that's gone through a mortgage process or that maybe has a parent that's gone through a mortgage process knows that you submit documents in the beginning and you think you're all fine and it's, you're going to get a closing date. And then all of a sudden, 2-3 weeks later, you get a request for another document. And now it's an emergency because you have maybe a week before closing. Or in my case last year, 2 days before the closing, they told me about all these documents that they needed. And so, of course, now I'm scrambling to make sure that we can still hit the closing date and that all parties involved are still committed to the process. So needless to say, it's a very stressful situation that in 2024 can be managed much differently. And so today I'm going to show you during our demo the power of having a virtual assistant with you along the way as a borrower during your application process. You might have a question or two. And from a banking standpoint, I know that I'm worried about drop-off rates. I've done all this work to get you to my site. I've paid so much money in marketing, or I've cross-sold you when you've come into the branch. All this effort has gone in to get you to start this process. And then you have a question that you might hesitate to pick up the phone and make a phone call for. Now the virtual assistant can actually take care of that for you. And then the second part I'm going to show you is all about AI applied to document processing. So the whole process of reading documents, making sure that they're the correct document types, organizing them, classifying them, and then if there are any errors, anything that needs to be resolved, getting back to the client as quickly as possible. And then the last part of the demo is going to be all about how to take any edge cases that normally would be routed to the bank. Our BPO can actually take them. So, let's say 80-20 rule. 80% of the time, AI is able to handle everything, and 20% of the time, maybe it needs to go back to a bank employee. Well, now with our BPO, we can handle 15% of that. So instead of it being 80-20, it's looking more like 95% and then 5% going over to the bank. So now I'm going to go ahead and start the demo. And I'm going to stop the presentation and share my screen. Just bear with me. And all right. Hopefully everyone can see my screen. All right. So when someone comes into the website, you put in all this effort to get them there. They're poking around the website, looking at the different products and services that you offer. And then they might have a question. If you're a first-time home buyer, maybe you don't know what to do, what's next. Here, you can ask the AI assistant. You can say, hey, I'm a first-time home buyer. How do I get started? What exactly do I do? Which one do I apply for? Which link do I click? And so the AI assistant can actually take that information and begin to guide them through the process. So in this case, they explain to them that you can go ahead and click on the online approval. And then once you get to the online approval, you can see that there are different products and services that are available to the borrower. In this case, they picked a 30-year mortgage, and they decided, all right, it's going to be a $340,000 home. I'm going to put $19,000 or so in down payment. And then I can add financial dimensions about my particular case. There's my salary, 220, utilities are this much, mortgage payment is this much, groceries is that much. we purposely put groceries and pension, which is not a common question, because we wanted to show the power of the system being able to tune to account for different types of situations that a bank or a risk officer may want to know about. And then this is also multi-regional. So in different regions, it might be common to ask about a pension or groceries. Anyway, all of these fields can be turned on and off. We can add more fields, and it builds into the overall scoring of the application. So it's a pretty powerful tool in that sense. So now we're seeing that Gail has been brought over to a screen where she can enter information about herself, her name, her email address, her phone number. This is still part of the approval process. And what you're going to see is that Gail is pretty comfortable checking the first couple of boxes, but then she has a question about the third one. It's all about, right now I got to run my credit check. And so, she's pausing a little bit. Here she might drop off. She might have to make a phone call, and then it might be, answer right away, maybe not. But instead, she can ask our AI assistant, okay, what is this about? What am I checking here? And so the AI assistant can look at the context of her question and determine the best response for her. And in this case, we know that she's concerned about a credit check. So here AI explains to her, in order for us to really process your application, we need to go to the credit bureaus. And in order to go to the credit bureaus, we do need you to check the box. So she feels comfortable now, checks the box, and now she's off to the races with the next in the process, which is about document collection. So we want to go ahead and get her documents. This is a two-factor authentication system. So the system itself will have a code sent to her. And so in this case, it's 4458. That code was emailed to her. She'll take that code, and then once entering that, she'll be taken to a place where she can upload documents. And so here she can go ahead and click various different documents, and then upload each document type she might be asked for. In this case, a driver's license, her tax return, bank statements, W-2s. And so what I want to show you is that it's not only uploading those documents, but very soon you're going to see where it starts validating those documents. And that's the key to getting things done in an hour as opposed to 3 and 4 weeks. So here we see that the tax return was validated, but the driver's license actually has a little bit of an issue. And so we're going to show you how AI is actually going through it. And we'll see that, her name is fine. The address has a high percentage chance of being right, 99% in this case. The last name is fine. But as we can see, the date is 5/22/2016 for when the license expires. And so here we're showing how the fields actually capture all the information, but the logic caught the fact that the license might be expiring. Here's a slightly different view. It's not quite the matrix letters that you saw on the previous screen, but it actually allows us to see that the license has a 99% chance of being expired. And so you can see that you're going to see right now that it's going to stop on the 99%, and it's right there. So 99% chance that it's expired. And then what if it is expired? What action can I take? You can program those things. So you can tell it to return to the user, or send it to the BPO, or send it to the bank. So in this case, we're going to return it to the user, right? And so now we're going to continue with the validation process. And it was just fine with the bank statements. But the user actually, Gail, is interested. She's like, hey, I thought everything was good that I uploaded. Why was my ID not accepted? And so again, this is a point where she might drop off, or she might be tempted to call the bank. And so in this particular case, AI can tell her, okay, it looks like your license expired in 2016. And she's fine with it. So now she knows, okay, that's what happened. So she got an answer. Now I'm going to show you how the AI is actually looking at a bank statement. And the bank statement's going to have important information about Gail, her account number, starting balance, etc. And it's going to give you confidence intervals. It's going to tell you, okay, I'm really confident about things like her name, beginning balance, but I'm only 56% confident about her account number. So it's going through the process behind the scenes of basically giving it a score and showing which of the areas seem a little bit risky. Unlike the license situation where the date was wrong and we need another document, in this particular case, as the AI is going through the process of scoring each of the pieces of information on the bank statement, we have a decision to make. Should we really return this entire statement back to the user, or should we try to do something about it, like send it over to the to a bank staff person, or can we handle it? Can the BPO handle it? So I think the answer is, let's not send it back to the client and tell them this is a bad statement. Instead, let's take this and send it over to our BPO and look at why it's only rated 56% correct. And in that way, we're not interrupting the bank staff, and we're not, kicking back the statement and making her look for another statement. In this case, we're able to handle it for her. And so here, I'm going to show you the process that a BPO agent takes to process this particular issue that we found. So immediately during the process, this is not like sometime later, this is real time. Our BPO agent, the pool of agents got 2 cases. And in this particular case, they're going to go into Gail's bank statement, and they're going to help validate it. So there it is, one of the 2 cases. This particular agent decides to pick up this case, and they're brought to this screen where they're able to validate the information that was already validated. They might as well take a peek at it since it's here in their queue. So they're going to take a look at, her first name, last name, is the bank's name correct? They're going to do all that. And then very soon they're going to focus in on the issue, which is the account number. And so they're going to compare the account number, and they're going to feel good that this particular account number is just fine. And they're going to check a little bit more with the balances and everything else. And now they feel very good about approving. And so they've approved. And at this point, it's going to go into a queue that's going to show them the rest of the application. What else is going on with this application so that I can pre-approve this for you as opposed to going to the bank to approve it. So the BPO agent is now looking at the dimensions of this particular case, and they see that the risk is at 23%, which was just fine. They see something with the W-2 that they need to look into. And I wanted to pause the video here because I think that this is something really, really important to look at. So in this particular case, we're seeing that the bank has decided to hash out the employee social security number as the BPO is checking things. And so they're allowed to check wages, the address, but they're not allowed to look at the employee social security number. Every single organization, their financial risk officer has a different appetite for risk. And so they've decided the things that they're comfortable sharing with our BPO for us to approve. And so that's another power of our platform, is that it allows the risk manager to really determine what things are going to go outside the bank and what things need to be handled inside the bank. So as we can see, Gail's application looks pretty good. She's at a 23% risk level. They've told us that anything below 25 is just fine. And so we're in good shape there. Her credit score is 77%. That's very much in line with everything that we need to approve. Her debt to income looks very good. Again, this puts us in the 77% range. And so this particular applicant is ready for approval. So we'll go ahead and approve that application. And then what it's going to do once it's approved is it's going to send it back to the risk officer to take the compliance officer to take a look at the case and then move it forward. But really quickly, I wanted to go back to the client. So here, remember we had that expired license. We do need to resolve that issue. And so we did send Gail a message indicating to her, hey, go ahead and send us a new license or a better picture of the license or a license that's not expired, depending on the situation. And we find here that first we need to go ahead and delete it. So the BPO agent deletes it. So now the system is ready to receive that document. And so she's going to go ahead and upload a new document. The system is going to process it, go through the whole upload process, look at all the matrix letter code that I showed you earlier, and determine that this particular license is just fine. And we're going to get a green check mark indicating that everything is good with it and that we're ready to move forward to the next step. So as you can see here, it's going through the validation process, and then we find that it's a green check mark and we're ready to move on. So we go ahead and accept this particular case. And now we're at the point where we have conditionally approved Gail for her loan. And she's going to get a pre-approval letter. And now this at the same time can go over to the underwriters for further review, because now it's all about getting to the closing, and the underwriters do need to take a look at that. And so they can see different dimensions about the client. They can see that they got the conditional approval, and they can see the credit score, and they'll be able to, in this case, Gail is actually able to ask any questions if she has any. It looks like she doesn't, so we'll just jump over to the underwriter screen. And in this particular screen, the underwriter has many cases that they can look at, and we're going to take a look at Gail's. He's going to go ahead and pick Gail's application, and it's going to look very similar to what we looked at earlier in the process. And it's no surprise, because really, it's a multi-stage process, but a lot of the important work has happened in the beginning, right? We know that Gail is at a 23% risk to us, but we're fine with anything that's below 25%. We like her credit score. We like the debt to income ratio. We like all the documents that she's submitted previously, including the W-2 form that we had to take a look at that our previous agent took care of for them. And once the underwriter is comfortable, they can go ahead and hit approve. And when they hit approve, at this point, it goes to the next stage in the process, and it allows them to really determine from a underwriting standpoint if there's anything that might be missing, or if they're ready to go ahead and approve them. Once they approve them, then they're able to basically generate the documents. And at that point, Gail is actually going to get a copy of the documents, and she's going to be ready for closing. So in that whole process, we reduced the review period from many, many hours to just under an hour. And we also took a process that could easily take 3, 4, 5 weeks. We have to actually end up rescheduling the closing, find a new closing date. The borrower, is at the mercy of the seller still wanting to sell the property because they have the money in escrow, and officially they could, move on, right? And so we've reduced all that risk for the client and brought it back to a situation where everything happened in a very timely manner. And we were able to reduce the risk for the customer. So now I'm going to go back to our presentation and share my screen. And so we just saw the AI virtual assistant. We saw how our AI processed the documents, identified errors, and in one case, it kicked it back to the customer to go ahead and upload another document for us. We didn't like the driver's license, it's expired. And in another case, we saw where the statement was pretty good. It's just one piece of information the AI couldn't process. And so we went ahead and sent that over to our BPO. We could have certainly sent it over to the bank if that's the bank's preference. But in this case, we wanted to show the power of being able to route everything to our BPO. So let me show you the next slide. And so what we accomplished there is taking a process that is happening in series, meaning one thing after the other. We took that process and parallelized it. So instead of the initial document checks happening and then 2-3 weeks later, oh, we need another document. Now it's an emergency for you. And then you got to really look for that document and upload it as quickly as possible, and then take another week or so, and then have the compliance officer take a look at it and say, oh, no, I need some other documents. We've taken that. We know the document types that they need. Let's go get them up front during the process. Let's validate them. And if there are any issues, kick it back to the client or kick it back to our BPO. And within an hour, feel very good that we've done all the sufficient data checks to move on. So that was a quick view of the mortgage loan process, which is a retail product. I want to tell you about commercial credit decisioning. So with commercial credit decisioning, it has the same hurdle. We're really analyzing documents, analyzing statements. And one of the big deals within the whole process of credit decisioning between businesses, this is no longer individuals. These are much larger amounts of money. is really looking at those financial statements. And the financial statements actually, they're very different types of financial statements. It could be, a profit loss statement. It could be, invoices, operating expenses. And so what ends up happening is it's a more complex review of documents. And it's also much more time consuming, and you have to have specialized experts to go and take a look at these documents and make sense of them and compare them to whatever baseline you've established. And that baseline is likely sitting in some Excel workbook. And so you have to enter all that information. And guess what happens when human beings take on data entry? Well, there are errors. If I had to give a human being 100 things to enter perfectly, 100 numbers, I don't think I'm going to get 100 out of 100 every single time. And so it's just more prone to errors versus AI taking the information off of the documents and then helping to decision. So we've got a really exciting demo to show you on this particular aspect for commercial business-to-business lending. And for that, I'm going to bring in my partner in crime, Lawrence, who you met earlier, and he's going to show you a really amazing demo. So I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing and hand it over to Lawrence.
Okay, thanks, Carlos. So before I begin with the demo, just to set the scene in terms of commercial lending and what it means, it's very important. And where we can innovate with the use of AI, it becomes easier and therefore more profitable. From a market view, over the last sort of 24 months, we know that lending in general has declined, and we're looking to see if banks will start to increase that lending, because the lending on commercial side is very important for GDP. And what is it that we're trying to achieve with some of the AI technology? Where Carlos explained to you on the retail side, it's because you've got a volume issue. So with a volume issue, you want to be able to service as many people as fast as possible. On the commercial side, it's more around the complexity and the improvement of that customer experience, making sure that they're not repeating work that they've done. So credit risk decisioning remains the same. It's always the same. We're trying to predict if a borrower is going to be able to pay back the amount of money that you're lending to them. But with increased regulations, with new technology, and with the expectations of the entity wanting to borrow, there's more and more constraints on which a financial institution and credit risk professionals can work within. And the only way to take advantage of this is to innovate, not really to transform, but to innovate and see how you can completely change that system and improve it to benefit the customer and to benefit you. What we do know is that disruptor banks and challenger banks have started to eat into some of this market share, especially around commercial. It's highly profitable. There's with the impact of exchange rates and interest rates, we know that more and more people are chasing after commercial lending for assets, and to make sure that they've got a guaranteed return on their investment. So where the disruptors and the challengers are able to take that market share from the tier 1, tier 2 banks, it's really because they've come from the ground up and looked at how they can completely transform that process. And what is it that they're trying to do? Well, they're trying to get more data, because data ultimately is how they make better, faster decisions. And that data might come from historical data repositories, but equally it might be unstructured data that wants to be included into the process. So that could be financial statements, which I'll show you a demo on, but it could be bank statements, invoices, contracts. And bringing validated external data into the process means that the engine, the chaos machine that you're running, is able to validate the entity and whether they're able to pay, is able to build better predictive models, is able to offer more refined and customized pricing and offers, and ultimately is able to get to a stage where you're as close to automation as possible for an accept. What is it? What is the data that you want to aspire to? Well, all the data that you can possibly get your hands on. We separate it out into 4 different brackets. That would be around the owner or directors of a company and their information. It would be around the company non-financial information, so who their suppliers are, what their goals, their products, their related parties. It would be around industry and market, what's happening with those industry trends, what's happening with competition, what's happening with regulations. And what I'm going to show you today is around the financials. So it will be around what do their financials look like over the past 1, 2, 3, 4 years, how that financial performance is going to play out over the next 2 or 3 years as to whether they're able to borrow more money. So you want to get more data into the process. As well as getting that data, you want to make sure that data is validated and is accurate for the decision that you want to make. So that's the purpose of our FSX, which I'm going to share my screen and we'll get started with the demonstration. Okay, so what I'm sharing here is the back end, sort of, you can call it a sandbox or an engine that works behind the scenes. It's very difficult to demonstrate AI and the capabilities, but this gives you a good feel for how the capabilities that it's able to bring to your decisioning process. Here we have a good mix of different companies that are available to pull information from. So we're going to choose one of the companies, make sure it's a US company. And what do we see here? We see we've got a number of different financial statements across the different years. So if we go to the latest financial statement that's been uploaded to the internet, and we'll take that document, so that financial statement, and we'll extract the information that's contained within that document. What we try to do is to keep the layout similar to how an analyst would extract that information. So if there's any issues or audit trail that needs to be entered into, the analyst would come into this screen and it would be something that's familiar with them. They would have on the left hand side the original document and financial statement of the entity, and on the right hand side they would have the sheet and information that they're trying to extract. What the AI engine has done here is it's taken from the balance sheet all the relevant information that would be needed to do some financial ratios and some calculations. And what we see is the AI has intelligently extracted that information and can copy it exactly where it extracted the information from in the document. So if we came back for a traceability or for an audit purpose, it can be seen from the original document where that information was taken. And we have the values, we have the descriptions, and we have that across the balance sheet, the cash flow, and the profit and loss. So we know exactly what information is taken and where that information from the document was taken. And we're fairly confident that we're at about 99.9% in terms of accuracy. I'll show you later where we don't hit some well, we may hit some issues with the extraction of data and what we do with that to be able to highlight that to the end user. So here we see that, we've extracted that information. What we're able to do is then go along and calculate and spread that information. So we have a spreading machine or a decision calculator. And that makes it very easy to look at current assets, and we can drag and drop information from the left-hand side to the right-hand side. There was no figure there, but we can take cash equivalents and we can drop that in. The 737,887 immediately goes across. And then we can do some calculations on this. This can be completely bespoke in terms of how you want to calculate your ratios and what you want to achieve from those. And equally, the ratios, it can be the only bit that you download or you integrate into your core system. So you don't need to take the original document. You don't need to take all the extracted information. You only need to take the information which is relevant for the decision process for the amount that you're lending. And all of this can be done in seconds. If it's a 500-page document, maybe it takes 60 seconds, 70 seconds. So we're getting close to sort of real-time assessment of very complicated information into that process. Just to give you a feel for some of the different types of information that we're able to take. So we're able to take information from lots of different sources. So this one's a bit more I would say a wordy document, and we're able to take subjective information from within that financial statement And we're also able to take the quantifiable information in a similar way and extract it. For different types of documents, so this one I think is maybe in a different language. Let's have a look, extract that information. Okay, so this one has some errors on it. So this one, we've identified that there's potentially some errors within the extraction of this information, and that's highlighted, and that can be sent to the analyst or into the decision process. What this error is probably that there's some mismatch in data calculations, and we'll highlight what we think the error is, and we'll show on the document where we took that information from and why we've highlighted that information. For this, there might be no issue, and the analyst might just be able to move forward and say that the information which is included into the accounts payable was, descriptive because there was a reason for it to be descriptive, but the actual figures that were extracted were absolutely correct. So this is a good example of how we can look at error analysis and how we can reduce that for you and your analysts. Where there's maybe a different type of document, we're not limited to the documents that can be extracted. The AI engine is able to look at and train itself on any types of documents and to take any types of information. So this is financial statements or information that's relevant to financial decisioning. Equally, we can take information from contracts or invoices and include that into the decision process. So while this is a slightly different document, more of a credit report, we're still able to extract information from that. And that goes back over 3 years for this one. And is completely relevant for the spreading, which we're able to execute, which has already been calculated here, and therefore we can have a look at what the ratios look like on this one because of much larger figures. So we've got an EBITDA there across 2021, 2022 and 2023, which has been calculated. And maybe for a certain financial institution, this profitability might be all that they're looking for, a biannual review to make sure that everything's operating as they expect on some of the assets that they lent against. Equally, what we can do is we can throw this into a score machine. So we can order rank this and show what this looks like for that entity against the market. So we can assign some sort of score against that, where they're performing well within that score and where they're performing poorly within that score. So we can see that here, for example, their liquidity is very strong, but their profitability might be below average. And these are taken from a set of benchmarks that can be calculated however you need them to be calculated. And the beauty of having it automated and using AI is you're not limited to who you can benchmark against. As long as the data is available and the data can be extracted and analyzed within the system, that data can therefore be benchmarked. So even if it's customers that are off you, that you want to compare with how they're performing against the customers or prospects that you're looking at, that can all be applied. And we go into some details here in terms of what we've captured from maybe different types of documents that we've included into this entity, like their overall company health, their overall financial health, and we provide a standard sort of report that is useful for executive committee and when a large lending decision needs to be made. This report can be completely bespoke and adapted based upon the needs, the sizes, and the amounts that you want. We also have some clever ability to define the income statement, to be able to really pull out that data to show where the net income is, what tax they're paying, and whether they're spending money in certain areas like research and development. And we can provide this snapshot, which is really, really useful for senior leaders and execs to be able to just drill down in terms of, is this something that they want to proceed with? Is this something which is useful? Equally, within this report, we can start to include ESG data. So that information, especially on large entities, is published. Where it isn't published, we can take self-declared information, and then we can start to look at whether their environmental, social governance is average, is something that you want to work with, whether the scope 3 emissions is relevant to your credit risk appetite and someone that you want to participate in executing business with. So all this information comes, in a final stage in a really nice report that you're then able to take to the board for large lending decision. The dashboard of this engine or sandbox can also be adapted. So we can look at, where the information's coming from, who's working on which information, whether the analysts or junior analysts are processing documents, what their performance looks like, and where they're spending time and where focus is. And this is good for team morale to look at, improving the work that they're doing, but also is good for looking at bottlenecks. So if there's certain areas where they're taking longer than expected, we can start to look at that. Is that an area that we can start to automate? Equally, we can put scorecards and benchmarks on this dashboard right up front, and we can share some other information, completely open and completely bespoke for how you require it to be. So I'll take a pause there. I think that's given you a good snapshot of the FSX solution and the capabilities. And I think we open it up to questions.
Thank you, Lawrence. Really, really interesting. I wish that this existed when I had my last mortgage, because this is a whole nother world. I wanted to ask you, Carlos, when you were showing some of the residential stuff kind of, clicked for me. So much of I think the resistance or the sluggishness around going to some of this technology is businesses like mortgage that have historically been so paper-based, right? So, I'm curious, like you had mentioned kind of the AI documents, piece. You guys essentially eliminated that?
Yeah, so there are going to be some cases where you do need documents, but for the most part, in 2024, everything can be scanned and saved to your core banking system, and it really does begin to eliminate the need for paper. I've been at financial institutions where they have to save 7 years worth of paper, and I've seen how they have a really huge footprint just for the documents, but they're at risk, right? Because if something happens at that branch, God forbid, flood or some sort of fire, that information is gone. So really, the safest place to put the information is to scan it and to keep it in your banking system.
So, Carlos, we're going to go to audience questions in a moment. I think you had a little bit that you wanted to cover around transformation roadmaps.
Yeah, I can do that. And let me go ahead and share my screen. And so, I didn't want to go too long into background information or background on mortgages and loans, because that seems like a waste of time. But I did want to tell you about how we go about getting AI started in your enterprise. And it all begins with an assessment. Really what we want to do is an assessment of your processes. What do the processes look like today? Every financial institution is different. Every financial institution has different systems that they're using, different levels of personnel. And so really we want to assess, what are your processes? What are you doing? So sometimes the systems actually force you into old legacy processes that aren't really necessary anymore. But I commonly hear, well, we've always done it that way, so we need to kind of continue that way. That was part of the way I was trained the day that I started at the bank. And so, we just continue to do it. And sometimes, when I start inspecting, like, what is this reason about? What is this process step about? We've just always done it that way. And potentially moving over to something else is too painful. Well, when you have someone to guide you, when you have someone to walk you through it, draw it out, show you how much can be saved by reengineering a certain process or adding automation like an RPA, robotic process automation to take, let's say, move documents from one place to the other, something very simple, or even AI that can actually read documents and begin to make decisions about those documents, right? And so when we do a full assessment of your processes, we can begin to categorize how we should move forward and build a roadmap for you. And then that roadmap begins to identify what should go first. Should it be like the really high risk stuff that I know is costing me money, or should I go for low hanging fruit? Again, this is really up to the bank and up to the folks that analyze and measure risk. You can also look at your, strategic goals for the year. Maybe some of what we're talking about aligns to your strategic goals. And so the roadmap is really meant to align with what fits best for your financial institution. So once we've got that in place, we don't start from scratch. We use our toolkits. So we already know how to get this up and running quickly and how to leverage our frameworks. And so we're able to go ahead and build, your first couple of, let's say, AI solutions quickly, begin to gather data, see how it's working, build confidence within the enterprise, within the bank or financial institution, and then really get to the point where let's scale this thing. So now we know how it works. We know how, we know where we are on the roadmap, so we're not flying blind. And now let's take it to the next level, right? And so we can now very much transform your organization by scaling the amount of automation that we put in place. And then it's not over. So, we don't go away and say, all right, good luck, good luck with everything. Technology is a constantly changing reality. And so we're here to handle all ongoing support, all operations for you. Should you want to take it on yourself, we obviously build all of the transition plans to bring it over to your operations group. Sometimes it's a hybrid, right? Sometimes it's ongoing support together, right? And then also, like I mentioned, as technology evolves, we want to be there every step of the way, letting you know what the latest new thing is in technology, not just in AI, but I'll mention that we have other areas that we specialize in, cloud services, data analytics, app modernization. So we look at the holistic picture as we build a roadmap for you. So Dan, that's what I really wanted to mention before closing out, and then bringing it back to Q&A. So back to you, Dan.
Yeah, sounds good. Sounds good. So a couple questions. I have a couple questions, and I think there's a couple coming into the chat. So if you have any questions for Lawrence or Carlos, please go ahead and send them in now. It occurred to me, and you kind of alluded to, the decision process, right? So Carlos, how many of the organizations you guys work with are really using these tools as a kind of an assist versus actually automating some of the decision making?
Yeah, so I would say in some cases for high stakes things like, let's say, fraud detection, in that case, they give it all to us to handle. And then there are other cases where it's a process that has a natural handoff between our staff and the bank. I went through one of those situations with the mortgage loan scenario where the bank statement, at the account number, something wasn't quite right and the AI couldn't read it. Maybe it was a fuzzy statement that was uploaded and that particular piece just wasn't very obvious. That's a situation where there are interactions and the bank can decide that. The bank can say, we prefer for you to handle those situations only when, let's say, it's an account number or when it's the first and last name. So we can set those thresholds. We can set those levels of what will be handled by us and what can be handled by the client. So there are a lot of interactive steps, especially in a more complex process like a mortgage loan application.
Are any of them doing it like the decision process, the approval process, completely automated, or no?
Yes, we have some clients. Lawrence can speak to it, but global clients that are using fraud detection, that are using the financial statements engine to really take over completely, reduce the risk. I do think that there's always the situation where you have to have some edge cases that the AI tells you about. It ranks it. It says, okay, I'm only 56% sure about this particular case. And then that is a natural place to hand it off to a human, be it our BPO or be it someone within the bank.
Lawrence, same on the commercial side?
Well, so commercial isn't really fully automated because there's more complexity built within commercial lending, and there's usually an authority or stakeholder approval level. In terms of collating the required documents that are needed, and in terms of improving that timeline to get to that decision process, it's hugely reduced. And what that does is it frees up the time internally within the bank and for the analysts, their expensive time, but also significantly increases the customer experience. So when they know that, you know, something's happening, having that transparency of that information that they've sent off is actually, you know, going through a process that, you know, make sure that they don't go and apply somewhere else, or make sure that they don't go and look at funding from elsewhere. So it's not quite automated in the commercial side for any banks, but there's good reason for that, and we're moving slowly towards that. And I think, you know, it won't be long before, certainly from an SME perspective, so the smaller business loans, sort of up to 50 million, that will become automated in the very near future.
Yeah, probably different in the commercial space versus the residential, Carlos. But I was thinking as you were kind of going through that, like, you know, I wonder what, I don't know if you know the numbers, you know, what the customer loyalty rate is on residential mortgages. I mean, to me, it seems like it's mostly, you know, rate driven, and then, you know, at least until recently, I don't remember ever having such a great experience in the mortgage process where I was like, hey, I really want to do business with this bank again. But is that changing now with this? Because I love stories where, you know, technology is the differentiator now.
Yeah, that's definitely going up. Even though you didn't have such a great experience your last time, and I actually didn't have a super great experience, I will say it's a lot better than 5-10 years ago when I did another mortgage. So the technology keeps improving, and, you know, it's all about improving the customer experience, and that's only getting better. And processes like we showed today, where things can go from hours to to minutes, and go from weeks to hours, that helps tremendously with abandonment rate, which is what you were alluding to earlier. You know, we spend all this money cross-selling to our customer. You know, they already have maybe a checking account with us or a savings account with us, and then we've told them about all these amazing products. By the way, it took us time to create these amazing products, and then we tell them about it, and then we get them to the goal line. And then this is where the technology can really make a difference and affect the abandonment rate.
If I just come in on the mortgages side, because you're right, in terms of standard mortgages, it seems like consumers go for which one's got the best rate, and branding maybe plays into it, maybe, you know, sort of 20-30% of the time. What will start to happen is there'll become niches within the market. So green financing will become much bigger. So if you get a discounted mortgage rate because of the provider you're going with, is going to give you some uplift because you've got you know, a more economical house, then you're going to go with that provider. They can only assess that if they're able to automate or include that automation within their decision process. Equally, if you're going to be buying property to let out, so whether that's from retail or from commercial perspective, you'll be looking at different rates, different providers, and therefore you have a limited choice, and you will go with the bank that's going to, you know, provide the funds in the shortest space of time. So the market is certainly adapting towards these niche lending decisions within mortgages.
And to build on that, Dan and Lawrence, very soon what we showed is going to be table stakes. Everyone's going to have it, right? So you think you have time, let me think about this, I might, you know, blend this into some processes. Very soon it's going to be an emergency in your boardroom, because everyone's going to have it, or God forbid your biggest competitor is going to have it, and it's working very well. At that point, you are now, you know, they do the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. This just moved from an opportunity over to a threat.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that, Carlos, because I'm very critical of a lot of the conversations that, you know, I have with members where they you know, are quantifying just the traditional risk of implementing these things, but they're not quantifying the opportunity cost and what you said earlier on. And again, now, you know, like, are there any numbers around what the drop off is, the marketing cost, the product cost? I mean, all that investment that is lost because somebody drops out of the funnel, right?
Yeah, they're huge.
I've got those stats. It's 48% dropout. So
That's
52%.
crazy.
Yeah. And as far as throwing a dollar amount, let me just tell you this. Have you seen how the big banks are offering you $500 to sign up? So that tells you right there what the acquisition cost is. People are, the banks are willing to spend $500 for you to please come over and sign up, right? So there's a lot of money invested in getting you there, and now your technology has to come through.
Well, and if it's like other industries, right? The goal is, if they spent all that money to get you there, they don't want to lose you, right? But then once you become a customer, right, they want to sell you other things, right? So I think there's a huge opportunity for loyalty. I've seen, especially in the commercial side, I think, Lawrence, I've seen more and more, just the stuff I use as a consumer or as a business owner, where they have access to your documentation and your finances. And so, they're promoting something that you've already been pre-approved for, or you already have access to based on, I guess, an automation that's happening behind the scenes without you even applying.
Yeah. Pre-approved limits. The calculation of pre-approved limits within commercial is very big to stop that attrition, exactly as you say. So especially where there's revolving credit, which could be an overdraft or a credit card, the banks want to monitor it, one, for risk, so that your performance isn't dropping off and therefore moving towards delinquency, but equally move it, trying to get that into a loan, a set loan, a business loan, and to keep you as a customer. So the only way to have these pre-approved limits, or PALs as we call them, is to have enough data on that entity to be able to calculate if they're going to be a good customer. And that includes capturing the information maybe from credit bureaus, but also from other areas like financial statements and invoices. And it makes it really easy for the banks to calculate them.
And on the consumer side, if I only had information on when your car note expires, Dan, then I could send you something about a new car loan program, right? Actually, I do have that data, right? It's sitting in your core system. Your core banking system sees the payments that are going out and notices that beginning July, you didn't make any more payments. So that means your car is paid off, likely, right? So you have the information and you can make really intelligent interpolations about what this particular client of mine might need. And in this Amazon, world that we live in, Uber, everything is predicted for you. You're kind of behind if you don't already hit them with the perfect credit card offer, or the perfect personal loan offer, or the perfect, hey, here's a loan you might be interested in because I think you might be buying a car soon.
Yeah, I mean, other than buying a house, I don't know that I've even sought after that stuff in the last several years. I think it's all kind of come to me. Like, I wasn't thinking about this, but okay, I'm already pre-approved. Maybe that would be helpful, right? So it's almost that proactivity is maybe even creating demand before it raises its hand, so to speak. Interesting.
That's exactly right. I mean, I rhetorically said, I wish I had that data. I do. And so people are mining that data and they're doing something with it. And if you're not, if you as a financial institution are not looking at at the gold mine of data, segmenting it, cutting it up, beginning to think about what you can offer, you're falling behind, and it's going to become less of an opportunity and more of a threat in the near future.
Carlos, question for you. Ramon's asking about RPA. You mentioned RPA earlier. Do you guys integrate with some of the existing RPA software tools?
Absolutely.
Or do you have your own?
Yeah. We have RPA solutions. We can also integrate with your RPAs. And again, the RPA is has been around for a couple of decades. And what does it do? It takes a file or it takes something, moves it over here. It's not very intelligent. It's just meant to do the grunt work and move things along, right? Whereas AI actually begins to read and inspect and make decisions and close decision loops. So RPA is a technology, is a framework that has been around for a while, and we're absolute experts at that. We have that running at Fortune 500 companies now, and now it's really taking it to the next level and beginning to inject AI into it.
It's time for maybe one more question. I'll ask both of you. One of the probably the biggest concern whenever we speak to a member and we talk about AI is just the risk and compliance piece, right? So, how do you see this kind of is is it helping or hurting, right? There's the risk reward situation, but there's also, plenty of examples out there where AI is actually helping risk compliance.
Yeah.
No?
Absolutely. So for fraud detection, it absolutely is helping your risk profile. But in terms of integrating AI into your enterprise, this is why it's important to do the first step that we do, which is the lean ops assessment, to understand your processes. You might have been already dinged by the regulators. The regulators might have hit you with a fine or already identified a certain area within your bank that you need to solve, right? And so by mixing in our automation, be it RPA or AI, you might be directly addressing the regulators and be able to go to the regulators and say, we heard you, and then here's what we're doing about it, right? And so this lean ops assessment isn't just, innovation forward thinking, but rather also helping you play a little bit of defense with the regulators who are always after you.
Sounds good. Lawrence?
Yeah, I mean, I see no downside to AI because, it improves performance, makes things faster, and is ultimately is cheaper and more consistent. But of course, there's a journey to get there to be able to fully implement it. Where it's having the most uplift in these certain areas, with our customers and what we're following, it's really on that single customer view. So it's on understanding the customer, linking that customer to some sort of existing product or new product that they want, and then following that customer. So only AI is able to do that because there's so many moving pieces and caveats within that. So it's going to be a bumpy journey to get there, but I think if we sit down in the next sort of 3 or 4 years, we'll only be talking about AI being used within all of the banks.
And Dan,
Carlo, thank you so much for your insights. Really appreciate it. Really enjoyed this session. We've arranged for anybody on this webinar to receive a free customized briefing workshop, an Art of the Possible session with one of our subject matter experts. If you'd like to take advantage of this, go to irpaai.com/HGS. Thanks to HGS for sponsoring today's session, and we'll see you on the next one, everybody. Thanks for joining.
Thanks, everyone.
Okay.